You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 97. Are you thinking of starting a podcast? Or maybe you already have, and now you're wanting to grow your following and increase your engagement. But how do you do this? Well, you've come to the right place because today we are chatting all about how to market your podcast and the steps you can take to increase your following, increase your engagement with your audience. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by Daniela Garcia, founder of PodBooking, a place that helps podcast hosts connect with potential guests and engage with their growing following. So I absolutely love this, being a podcast host myself. So I'm so excited to dive into this with you and learn so much about what you offer, what PodBooking is all about. So welcome, Danielle. I'm just so honored to have you as my guest, and I'm so excited to learn all about your story and advice. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you.
Hey guys, I'm Daniela. I'm, as Jessica said, CEO of PodBooking. I am a Cuban Capricorn from Miami, so that tells you a whole lot about me out the gate. And I just recently started pursuing PodBooking and setting up for the launch and everything else. And so I've been connecting with the podcasting community, and Jessica's one of those people who I've been connecting with. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you guys a little bit more about PodBooking, as well as my perspective coaching and my soon to launch ebook around perspective. So lots of fun things to talk about, lots of fun things going on. And I mean, 2020 is just one of those years where it's not one thing could happen. Everything had to happen.
100%. It is the year of everything.
Yup.
All right, so I want to start at the very beginning. How did your entrepreneurial journey begin? What did you start off with? Did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. For a long time, it was always just kind of like, I always wanted to work with startups, or I always wanted to work with smaller businesses. I didn't necessarily want to work with larger companies and corporations because I wanted to help businesses grow. And then it became, I do really want to do my own thing, but I don't necessarily know what I want to do. So I started a sales agency for luxury cosmetics about 2 years ago, which is still quite successful. I work with a number of brands, and it's called Indie Beauty House. And we just handle retail wholesale sales for cosmetics brands, which is awesome. And it's great work. And I absolutely love it. I mean, what's not to love about the cosmetics industry? But it just wasn't it didn't quite click that passion. It didn't spark that thing like that. You know how you kind of like a guy, but then there's your soulmate, and it's just like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. That's what's kind of happened for me with PodBooking. All of my different talents and different skills have aligned for it, and it just feels very right, which has been great.
Gotcha. Okay, so are you still doing the side thing that you're just talking about with Indie House?
Indie Beauty House? Yeah, absolutely.
Indie Beauty House? Okay.
I am a really strong proponent of multiple streams of income, and a strong proponent of never putting all your eggs in one basket. So
very smart.
Yeah, no, it's the best advice I think anybody can give anybody.
Definitely. I second that. It's fun, right? You get to dabble in different things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Meet different people.
Exactly. I love it. Now, you talked about perspective coach, and I kind of want to learn, how did this start? What is it?
Yeah, no, I am a professional optimist. That's the best way of putting it. I have a number of people I work with that just have, what's the best way to put it? Naturally are pessimists.
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally are. And when somebody challenges that thought process for them and introduces a new way of thinking, it can really, it can be incredibly life-changing. We've had some pretty awesome results. But definitely it's a fun space to definitely answer any questions that you have about it.
All right. So how do you work with people one-on-one as a perspective coach? Like, what does that experience look like?
A lot of it is just asking the right questions and also just presenting shifts. So a really common example is a number of people struggle with like weight loss and fitness goals. And they're doing the work and they're sticking to the diet and all these things, but their head's just not in the space and they're not being as consistent as they could be because they're not getting the results they want or whatever the case may be. And what we usually end up finding is that it's their mindset around the goal and their mindset around the process. And just small, minor tweaking to that can alter everything. So not necessarily focusing on, our goal is not to lose 10 pounds. Our goal is to go for a walk for 30 minutes every day. And making that the goal instead, shifting the perspective on the process, making the process your goal. Well, now when you get the results, you're like, oh, great, I did it. And I didn't even realize, because you were giving yourself wins every single day. You were checking something off your to-do list. You were achieving your goal every day. Your goal wasn't to lose 10 pounds. Your goal was to go for a walk. So a lot of the times it's just kind of discovery. Tell me about your life. Tell me about your days. Tell me about what you're trying to achieve. Tell me about the way you're trying to achieve it. And let's dig deep into the thought behind what you're doing and the motivation behind what you're doing.
I love that. Now, how did you get into that?
I have been doing it since I was like 5 years old.
Wow.
I've always been called an aggressive optimist, a competitive optimist. It's always something like I can't take anything not super seriously. I take everything very seriously. So even my optimism is just like, it's intense. Like I'm just like, no, I refuse to see things in the negative way. I just can't. My brain can't compute it. And I've always done that for my parents. I've done it for my friends. And it got to the point where, so many people were actually actively coming out to me and were like, Daniela, you always had this, you always had these great perspectives and things. Like, I want your thoughts on this, want your feedback on this. And then I was like, I feel like people would totally utilize this on a larger scale. And it's worked. And I have an ebook that's set to launch September 25th. And so it covers a few of the major shifts, the most common shifts that I adopted in my own life, as well as that I usually recommend. And I would recommend on a more general scale, if you will. Some of the major shifts are the concept of a good person. And for the longest time, people have not pushed themselves and not motivated themselves because they're like, oh, I'm a good person. I pay my bills. I've never killed anybody. I pay my taxes. I'm nice to strangers and, just these very silly, standard, basic ideas of what is a decent, good person. And it usually comes down to being law-abiding and just not being evil. And I have challenged that notion of it's not about being a good person. It's about being good at being a person. And it comes down to, it's not our separation from evil or our separation from bad that makes us good. We have to take ourselves to a new level. We have to establish a new standard because we as humans have evolved. And so should our ideas around goodness.
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to checking out this ebook. It sounds really like deep.
Yeah, that's definitely what the consensus of a lot of people have. Like my father said that he was like, oh, wow, I didn't know you were a philosopher. And I'm like, am I? I don't think so. These are just things that I've genuinely thought of in my own life because I've been very dedicated to my own personal development and very dedicated to like my own career and my own just place in this world overall. And these are all the different things that I have done throughout, I'd say like the last 5 years that have really changed things for me and have helped me find and fulfillment, as cheesy as it sounds, like real genuine happiness, real genuine just balance and joy out of my life.
Amazing. Now, obviously, you're a multi-passionate entrepreneur who likes to dabble in different things, because these 3 different things that you're doing right now are very different, right? Like they're not in the same industries, really.
Yes and no. There's definitely connections between all of them. They have their own, like, I mean, having a positive, good perspective and positive outlook on life is definitely a tool in any entrepreneurial venture. As well as, working with brands and knowing that behind the scenes of wholesale agreements, and knowing the behind the scenes of approaching brands and how that process works of buying and selling advertising and connecting strategic alliances and connecting one brand with another and seeing how they can work together and how they fit. Like, that's definitely I would not be able to do one without the other. Each different thing I do provided a skill set that has led me to where I am.
Gotcha. I love that. Now, as an entrepreneur, what do you love the most about, running these 3 different businesses? And then what do you struggle with most in each?
What I love most about them is that all 3 of them are contingent on the success of other people. So how successful I make other people is what will determine my success, which I love, because I'm a firm believer that there is no elevation without elevating others. There is no climbing the ladder of success without helping others up as well.
I love that.
And I'd say the hardest part is just the consistency and the planning and the actual work, the actual logistics of the work.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, I want to jump into PodBooking because that is our main topic for today.
Absolutely. It's my baby.
What prompted you to pivot and to start this new business on podcasts? Like, were you always interested in podcasts? Like, where did this intrigue or this passion start?
So I had previously had a podcast. About 2 years ago, Indie Beauty House. We had the Indie Beauty House podcast, and we talked about like the behind the scenes news of the beauty industry and things like that. And I had experienced the frustration of connecting with guests. And I was really fortunate that, luckily, being in the beauty industry and being in that world and everything else, I had a decent network, and I had decent enough networking skills and savviness to connect with people and get some really amazing guests that I'm to this day forever grateful that they came on to my little show. For a lot of them, it was their very first podcast. And since then, they have gone on to do tons of podcasts, be interviewed by Forbes magazine, so on and so forth, So like, it was nice to get those early on interviews. But I definitely hit that roadblock quite a few times of that frustration of connecting with guests. And then on top of that, as Indie Beauty House grew, and we were trying to find ad space and space to sell or to promote the brands we were selling, we realized, like, man, it's really hard to find podcasts that would be relevant to our brands, and that would be affordable for our brands. Because, indie beauty brands are smaller brands, they're independently owned. Who's posting on the Instagram page is probably the owner. These are small businesses. So they don't have huge media budgets to go after these really well-known multi-million listener podcasts that are super easy to find and connect with, but not that easy to afford. And so, I had hit that frustration once again of this growing community that wasn't connected. Fast forward to a few months ago, and I'm thinking, man, I feel bad for people who like don't have the savviness. Like, yeah, maybe I could do like a course or something. Maybe I could write an ebook or something along the lines of, ways to network and things like that. And then I'm like, man, if only there was just like one place where everybody was just on there and everyone was like organized by their category and their niche. And I could just put in the target demographic that I'm going for and the topic I want like to be covered or whatever, and then find the perfect podcast. And then I was like, wait, that should exist. I could do that. And that was when PodBooking was born.
That's such a great idea, because it is hard to to find guests, to connect with people, to grow your podcast, to...
Yeah, the community. And it wants to be connected. That's the frustrating thing is, I mean, there's hundreds of groups on Facebook. There's tons of hashtags, and different little cliques and networks that are now trying to form because everybody wants to collaborate and they want to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just noticed it finally clicked for me. I was like, yes, this needs to be done. Let's do it. And it's happening.
Amazing. Now, is it fully launched yet?
Not yet. Okay, so our beta testing starts October 5th. And our beta testers will have access, or started October 5th, and our beta testers will have access to the platform exclusively for a month. And so we will be fully launching November 1st. Very excited to have everybody on. Oh, I just got really nervous saying all of that out loud.
You're putting it out there, which means it's going to happen.
Absolutely. 100%. It's all happening. It's just wild. It's a fun ride, this whole making something out of nothing. I highly recommend it to anybody interested.
It's very exhilarating.
Definitely.
Now, you said this is a platform, so I kind of want to know, what is PodBooking all about? What can somebody expect joining this community or joining this platform? What is it going to include? What are you going to offer?
So you would expect to be able to log in. We have integrations with Facebook and LinkedIn, so you can use those accounts existing. Just like log in with Facebook, like many of us have seen on other platforms. And then you'll be prompted to fill out our questionnaire, and it'll just ask you questions around your show. Also around you, like, are you an aspiring guest, or are you a current host, or are you a collaborator? And collaborators are media that's in, brands, media buyers, podcast cover artists, producers, engineers, the many different collaborators in podcasting. So we kind of narrow down your profile type, your questions, and then you'll create your actual profile. So you'll put in pictures, you can post content, blogs. Everyone will also have access to the HTML of their profile. So it'll give you some MySpace throwbacks. You guys will be able to download or upload your own media players with your podcasts on it if you're interested, as well as actually customizing your platform, your actual profile more if you want different backgrounds and things like that. You guys are going to have that creative space because, again, this is a community of creatives. So let your freak flag fly. And and then we'll have the public forum, which is going to be very much like a news feed. There's also, messaging and commenting and things like that. And PodBooking will also be releasing our own content, our own blog posts and conversation starters, icebreakers, if you will, to just kind of get communication going in all the different niches. And then you'll be able to find people according to their niches. And we're going to have everything very categorized. So you can just I want to go and talk to the mindset and wellness people. I want to go talk to fitness. I want to go and look at cosmetics and beauty. I want to go and hang out in true crime for a little while. If you make it out of true crime, you can go over to history. If you don't become the true crime story, then you can shoot on over to entrepreneurship. So you'll have all these different categories and subcategories that will have their own groups and their own news feeds and things like that as well. So very much like just any other social network platform, MySpace, Facebook, even LinkedIn, but it will all be geared and specific for podcasting, which is great because it's not going to be like how it is now where you're on Twitter or you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook and you're in podcasting groups or you're following podcasting, platform or profiles. However, it's mixed in with all your other stuff, and it's got all your personals. And it's also going to be great because you're going to have your collaborations on one platform and then have your community engagement. So your audience engagement on your other platforms.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. I love that. That's such a great idea to just get it all onto one platform, like your one go-to for everything.
Exactly. And I definitely think it's going to help. I think it's going to help a lot of people also staying focused because that's something that a lot of podcasters have said. It's it's hard for me to focus on just building my podcast when I'm on Facebook or when I'm on Instagram. Because, my mom's posting or my cousins are posting or I get into a political fight or the other silly things that happen on, you just get sucked into your personal life and you don't focus on your podcast itself and you're not focusing on on reaching out to other podcasters to work together and things like that.
Totally agree with that. Now, obviously, you have experience with podcasts, and I would love to dive into some tips and things like that that you have for anybody that has a podcast or that is looking to start a podcast. Okay. So, what are some general tips that you would have for somebody who's starting from scratch, who's looking to start a podcast?
Figure out what your podcast is going to be about. Like, pick a niche. And this is something that I've experienced with a lot of people, is it's difficult to pick just one, because they're like, oh no, I kind of want to do something kind of general, just like lifestyle or whatever, so I can cover a multitude of things. Yeah, you're never going to be everything to everybody, and it's going to be so difficult to brand something general. Pick something specific. And if you're having difficulties picking that one specific thing, sit down with a piece of paper, give yourself 1 minute, and for that 1 minute, write. So write everything that you would talk about for a specific topic, and then another minute for another topic. Whichever topic you were able to write the most amount of things down, that's what you need to make your podcast about. That's the thing that you're the most knowledgeable about. That's the thing that you can come up with the most content about. That's the thing that you're going to be able to consistently deliver value on. And that's the best tip I can give somebody who's like just starting, trying to figure out what they're going to do.
That's great advice. I love that. Now, for growing a podcast, so for somebody that's started or either has been doing it for a while and they're having issues getting, the number of downloads that you generally need to monetize your podcast, things like that. What are your tips for growing that community and creating an engaged audience that is going to leave reviews and rate your podcast and connect with your content and whatnot?
Remember the most important thing about content creation, which is building value. Remember that as long as your audience is getting something from every post, is getting something from every episode, is leaving with a piece of information, more knowledge, more wisdom, a better understanding of the topic than they did when they came on, that's where your real engagement is going to come from. On top of that, I would say create a perfect listener profile. Write down everything that is your perfect audience member. How old are they? What gender are they? Are you culturally or racially specific? Do they have specific interests? Where are they right now? If you were looking for them on the internet, who are they following? Who are they already engaging with? Find out who your perfect audience member is, and then make it specific to that person. Make it specific to their experience. And the more specific you are to a niche, to a specific group of people, like the more they're going to be attracted to you.
That's such great advice. Creating that ideal client is so important, so you know who you're speaking to. And then you can tailor all that content to their specific needs.
And then look at your existing followers. And are your followers that person? Have you been attracting that person? And if you are, then it's great. I mean, even if you only have 50 followers or 50 listeners, but if they're all 50 listeners of your demographic, you're doing the right thing. You're attracting the right people. So now it's just engaging on a deeper level with them. Now it's reaching out to them more specifically. Maybe it's more content, maybe creating an email list where you're sending them like a newsletter, a few days before your episode, or maybe you're doing more giveaways or shout outs. With PodBooking, that's been a big part of elevating the community and getting the community together has been shout outs. And we have our female feature Fridays. We have our Throwback Thursday history podcasters. We've got our Tuesday true crime podcasters. And then we do random shout outs throughout the rest of the week of, different giveaways people are doing, engaging with them. And when I say engaging, I don't mean just like go and mindlessly like everything that's every post that's got a hashtag that you're following. I mean, genuinely go read what they're talking about, comment back. It's hard work, but it pays off 100%. And also noticing what is it that will make your followers happy, if that makes sense. Like when somebody engages with your post in a certain way, what is it that makes you happy? Is it when they just like it, or is it when they comment and they engage with it? Or is it when they comment and they resonate with it? Is it when they share your post? If those are the things that you're looking for, then those are the things you need to be doing.
That's great advice. I love that. What are people striving for when they're beginning for a podcast to get? Like, how many downloads per episode should they expect to get? Or,
That's so general. I mean, it depends on your niche. It depends on, did you have a brand going in? Did you have an existing following going in or not? There's a lot of factors there, a lot of variables.
Gotcha. Do you have a specific number in mind where people can start reaching out for sponsorships or reaching out to brands for collaborations, things like that? Like, at what point should they be looking at that next level?
For a lot of people, they would say that 1,000 download, depending on how long it kind of took you to get there, is a move. For me, I would say it's more so about the quality of your followers. If you only have 50 followers, yeah, but if they're dedicated followers, if they're highly engaged and they're fitting a very specific niche, that's a quality audience.
Mm-hmm.
I think about it in terms of sales. Sales, it's like, you'll get 1 to 2 sales out of every 50 to 100 people you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, that's like sales ratios. So if you have 50 to 100 followers, that can be monetized. That they're buyers. You've got 1 to 2 buyers in there for a brand,
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got consumers reporting at 54% that they trust brands that advertise on podcasting more, they're more likely to purchase from a podcast, like a brand that's advertised on a podcast I listen to, than in any other form of media. Yeah, I definitely think that podcasters can be monetizing from pretty early on, which is why I think it comes down to just the network and the streamlining of the process of finding a podcast, and the streamlining of the process of finding a brand that fits your niche,
Mm-hmm.
and finding a brand that is trying to attract the same. So that's another part of your profile now. So your perfect audience member, what brands are they buying? Who are they? What products do they need? What products would they trust you to provide? And that's another question that podcasters need to ask themselves when they start thinking about, promoting brands and things like that. You think, okay, well, what are the areas of their lives that they trust me with? Because it's like, okay, if you're a financial guru and people are listening to your podcast, yeah, they'll listen to you when you promote a new book, or if you promote a sales coach or a finance coach or a platform for foreign exchange trading or things like that. But if you come out and you're like, hey, you guys should buy this blender, they don't, where do you get this idea that I would trust you for my home appliances? Like, you never talked about home appliances before.
Totally.
So you have to think about, okay, what's relevant? What are the lines of products? What are the brands that my listeners are going to trust my input on? What areas of their lives have I entered?
That's such great advice. I love that. I'm definitely going to apply it myself. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. No, definitely.
Now, when it comes to marketing your podcast, what are the best ways to do that? What do you suggest?
Number 1 is always to collaborate with other podcasters. I say that because their audiences are already a pre-qualified group of people that listen to podcasts. That's always going to be the largest hurdle for a podcaster to get an audience. If you have to convince somebody to get into podcasting and then get into your podcast, that's 2 layers. Whereas if you go on a show, their listeners already listen to podcasts. They're already sold on the concept. They're already fans of the medium.
I never thought about it that way. That's actually brilliant. That's so true.
That's why I'm a perspective coach, man.
Now, collaborating with other podcasts, obviously you're pitching yourself to appear on their podcasts in addition to possibly asking them to appear on yours. What do you suggest in the best way to pitch yourself? So this is like a selfish question off the side now, is I'm in that mode where I'm starting to pitch myself to podcasts. And it's not as easy as pitching yourself to have a guest on your podcast.
It's definitely a different mindset. So you have to, I would say, focus on what you can do for them, not so much what they can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would say focus on your engagement numbers. how similar your demographics are. If you're going to approaching a podcast that's a similar niche to your own, and you look at their followers versus your followers, and you have followers they don't have that would be relevant to them, that's information to tell them. So telling them, about 25% of my followers are definitely in your niche, in your demographic, in your target audience, and don't currently follow you. So this is definitely an awesome opportunity to get you in front of those people. I think they would get a lot of value from being introduced to you. And so again, making it more so about what you can do for them and how they'll get value from having you on their show.
I love how you spin that. That's such a great way to pitch, including those types of things where, again, you're letting them know everything that you're going to be able to offer them.
Exactly. And then I would also have a plan, have a plan for the days leading up to the podcast, like how you'll promote it. If you guys will have a post, 2 weeks later, if you'll do a throwback to when I was on, so-and-so's podcast, to continue the engagement beyond the episode. Having, I would say a 14-day plan is really, really solid and very impressive.
I love that. Okay. Now, I've been reading a lot about podcasts, obviously, because I'm trying to grow my podcast and whatnot. And I read something that a lot of the audience is now listening to podcasts on YouTube.
Yes.
That blew my mind because I'm like, what?
Yes. And I'm so glad that you've brought it up, because this is a new, wonderful way, or really an old, because YouTube's pretty old, but it's now being taken over by the podcasting world, and podcasting listeners are jumping on YouTube. And this is a great way for podcasters to be monetizing, because, YouTube is, almost immediately you'll start making money on it.
Okay. What?
Well, YouTube videos, people have become very financially successful on YouTube videos because of the ads. So you get paid on views. I do not know the actual numbers, but I know that the standard's not super high. I have friends who have gotten maybe I want to say 100 or so views and have gotten checks from Google.
And okay, this is blowing my mind. So how does this happen? Are they reaching out to YouTube? Are they reaching out to brands to have their ads on? How does that all work?
Well, you've seen YouTube videos and you've got the ad and then you skip ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ad, they have to pay for that. They pay for that space.
So how do they connect to be able to get?
You get a chunk of it. It's a very small percentage, but it adds up the more views you get. And what's great with YouTube is that it's very passive. So YouTube videos, I watch YouTube videos that are 5-6 years old. Those people are still getting paid on it. Those content creators. So it's great passive income.
Wow. Okay. That really blew my mind, because I was thinking, I'm maybe I should upload all my episodes over onto YouTube as well. And I'm okay.
100%. Definitely you should.
All right. Well, thank you for that advice and that insight into YouTube. I definitely would never have thought that it was that big of a deal.
Definitely look into the details of what the milestones are and stuff. I don't have it offhand, but I know that it's not a super high standard. It's not a very high bar to meet. People do it every day.
Amazing. Is there anything else before we jump into the rapid fire questions that you'd want to share that people that should know about podcasting or your community PodBooking?
The most important thing I can say about podcasting is it's all about consistency. 100%. Your success as a podcaster is an inevitability. It is the fastest growing medium in the world. The demand in the market is insane. There's about a million podcasters in the world, and in the US alone, 155 million podcasting consumers. So the demand for the content is there. It's just a matter of consistency, and it's just a matter of consistently producing content and consistently promoting that content. You build it, they will come. And as for PodBooking is aiming to streamline that process for everybody, and hopefully everyone will grow way faster and it will catapult people to a whole new level. If you're interested in joining PodBooking, pod-booking.com is where you need to go. The waitlist will still be open even during beta testing to join the community once beta testing is over, and then you guys will be prompted on November 1st to create your profiles.
Amazing. Okay. I'm definitely going to keep my eye out for that.
Good.
Now, with the community, they're wanting to ask some questions. So the very first one is, how important is the name that you choose for your podcast?
It's pretty important. So your SEO matters for a podcast. So, and also you don't want your name to not explain what your show is about. Like, make sure your name is relevant to what your show is about. Don't make it so that somebody comes to your show expecting one thing and not getting it, because that's going to hurt you from attracting that audience that you're looking for.
Totally agree. That's great advice. Now, the second one, in your opinion, what is the best route to start with? Is it guest or solo shows?
Guest.
Why do you say that? Because
other people's audiences, when you don't have one, is going to be the best way to get your audience, to start building your audience.
That's true. I love that.
I would say maybe like a short intro, maybe like an Instagram live or like a short video, or just like introducing yourself. Like it's like a short pilot. But I would definitely say getting guests on as soon as possible is the best way to grow.
Perfect. Now, what is your favorite way to reset from all of this work that you do, these 3 businesses that obviously keep you very busy?
Running or hiking, anything that's outdoors and fresh air that I don't need to look at my phone for, because if I look at my phone, I will start working.
I definitely agree with that one. And the last one is, what are you binging right now? So are you into Netflix or other platforms? Do you read books?
I do. Okay, so currently reading The Challenger Sale, which is a great book about sales and about the different way of approaching sales from a teaching standpoint, more so from a salesy standpoint. And not currently binging anything, just because of the amount of time that binging takes, and I really haven't had time. But if I could be binging, I would have already finished The Umbrella Academy by now, season 2.
It's a good show.
It's so good. And like season 2 has been so much better than season 1. And I'm so upset with myself that I haven't finished it yet. But there's only so much time in a day, you know?
Oh God, yeah. And you can easily like power through 4 hours. It's insane.
Oh, it doesn't just go by. It's crazy.
Totally. Now, if anybody wants to learn more about you, where do you hang out the most?
Instagram lately. I'm at danny.san.diego on Instagram. That's my personal. So you'll see a lot. I've got my daily quotes, different perspective and motivational quotes. And also I'm pretty active of sharing the different things that I do, my hikes and my dog and all my crazy adventures, skydiving, things like that. So definitely I would say learning more about me on Instagram is a good idea. There's, of course, my ebook where I express a lot of, like I mentioned before, a lot of my inner thoughts and perspectives. You'll learn a lot more about me there. akindofabigdeal.com. That's akindofabigdeal.com. And I was so stoked when I got that domain.
That's such a great name. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for taking the time to share your entrepreneurial journey and such valuable advice on how we can grow, market, and engage with our audience on podcasts. And I know so many are going to benefit from hearing this. Those wanting to start a podcast, those, having a podcast and looking to grow, they're definitely going to benefit from the advice and the story that you just shared.
I really hope so. That's the goal, guys.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.